What is going on, everybody? We got Mr. Splash Cousin himself, Jordan Elliott, in the building. We're doing our vibe check. Typically, we do these on Fridays. I've gotten a little bottled up on the last couple Fridays, so we're bumping Jordan up to Tuesday because we want to get your thoughts, Jordan, on this game. What was the vibe? Because going into this, right, it was we wanted this one. Well, what's your vibe? What was your vibe going in, and kind of what was your vibe going out?
Kind of the both. I expected them to be in a close, hard-fought game that they probably would lose at the last second. I just thought that it would be Seattle scoring at the end, not the 49ers failing to score at the end. And the vibe is just that they can't beat the Seahawks, and it's just as simple as that. It's unfortunate. It's a cruel reality about this team, but over the last 10 years, for whatever reason, they just cannot beat the Seahawks, and they had plenty of opportunities to do so. You have to tip your cap. Seattle did, make plays when they needed to, stuff like the fake punt and just kind of, getting big stops when they needed to. Obviously, that last one being the biggest one. But it's kind of unfortunate because I'm trying to think of a more favorable matchup the 49ers have had. This is probably the most favorable matchup they've had against the Seahawks since probably 2011, I would say. So the first time in 10 years where really the 49ers are just objectively that much better on paper, where it's that big of a margin, and they kind of came out flat. And I just think that's indicative of how this matchup has gone for the better part of a decade now. And I just don't really like the vibe isn't terrible because I kind of expected it. I saw a lot of people that were very confident that the 49ers were going to go in there and like blow them out. And I'm like, oh man, like you're just setting yourself up for massive disappointment.
They must have forgotten what happened in week 4 at home at Levi's, but
yeah, and it's just like I said, it's just there's something about playing in that stadium. There's something about, like I was there for that Dre Greenlaw game a couple years ago, and the Niners dominated the first 55 minutes of that game, and Seattle came within an inch of winning. Like just no matter what happens, it seems like everything bounces their way in that stadium. So I pretty much, like I was talking to a friend of mine who's a Seahawks fan after the game. I just pretty much told him, like, I will never go into a game confident against the Seahawks feeling like the 49ers are going to win. It doesn't. If Geno Smith started that game yesterday, I wouldn't have felt too great about it. But on the plus side, getting all the negativity out of the way, I think that as much as it sucks losing to Seattle, losing that game was such a minor loss compared to losing to the Vikings would have been. So them taking care of business against the Vikings was such a big deal. Because if they had lost that game, it would have been 10, maybe even 20 times worse in my eyes than losing to the Seahawks due to the playoff implications. So yeah, it sucks, but on the plus side, it really isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's more so just like every single season this happens, and every single year the Seahawks find a way to beat them.
Yeah, and this game, like you said, it was set up on paper just to walk in there and really, put together a solid game where they could come out and they should have won, like we said, on paper. But it got off the rails really quickly, and obviously a big point of emphasis since on Monday, and probably talks that have continued into today, all started with that first drive by Seattle. Again, the beautiful 3 and out, right? We're like, oh, this is exactly the way we wanted to start. Get Russell Wilson off the field. It looks like their offense was already in a rut to start, and then they gashed the 49ers with the touchdown on the fake punt. What was your assessment of that entire situation? And of course, we understand that a lot of the people who ingest 49ers content, they like to understand to try to rationalize who's at fault. Is there a fault here, or how do you kind of view that entire situation that kind of got this train headed in the wrong direction, essentially?
Well, I think it sucks because Seattle, what they tried to do was they tried to come out. Obviously, Russ has had problems throwing the ball downfield. The offense hasn't been clicking for whatever reason. And if you go back to like the Eagles game, the Cardinals game more recently, the 49ers defense has had a really hard time defending screen passes. So Seattle's 2 of their first 3 play calls were screen passes, and the 49ers defense just shut them down. They had like 4 yards on those 3 plays because I think it was 4th and 6 on the fake punt. So it's really unfortunate because they went in, they deferred, they willingly gave Seattle the ball first, completely shut them down, forced them to go 3 and out. And I just, at that point, I just kind of tip my cap to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's one of the most conservative coaches in the entire league. He's a guy who rarely, especially if any of you guys know Seahawks fans, they'll tell you how frustrating it is. He doesn't go for it on 4th down. So the fact that he was willing to do that off the first series of the game clearly, I think deserves some recognition because they don't get that there. You're pretty much giving the 49ers a short field. It was a pretty much make or break. You're either going to steal a lot of momentum, which I think ended up being the difference in the game, or you're giving it all to the 49ers and you're pretty much checking out after the first drive. So I give them a lot of credit. And like the whole front that the Niners were running on that punt coverage, they basically just doubled the gunners on the outside, and they were basically playing for a big return from Aiyuk. They were playing for better field position, which I can't really fault them for. If you stop a team, if you force them to go 3 and out and they're punting inside their own 30-yard line, you have a huge chance to flip field position there. So I just think they got caught off guard by a better play call. I don't think that it was some egregious like error. And I didn't really like that Shanahan was saying he wishes Aiyuk made that play. They're like, Ayuk's not a safety. He's a wide receiver. I don't expect him to be making tackles in the open field against a guy who has like 40 yards of momentum running downfield before he's making a cut. So it's unfortunate. But again, at the same time, like I hate to be like, I don't want to be just oversimplified, but it's really as simple sometimes as just tipping your cap to the opponent and acknowledging that you got bested. I just think that's what happened on that given play. The 49ers did a really good job to shut down that fake field goal. The Rams tried to run a couple weeks ago. DJ Jones made a big tackle. You got to tip your cap to the Niners defense if you're the Rams, because that probably works. And this is just a reverse situation here where the Seahawks special teams just executed. They caught them off guard. And you just got to kind of applaud that aggressiveness, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And it happens so early, and of course it's unfortunate, but there's plenty of time to come back and correct the wrongs created on that first drive. But unfortunately, I don't know. I want to get your take on this before we actually dive into it and kind of get your thoughts on it. And especially, you said you were at the Clink in 2019 on that amazing, like, that's one of the best games I've ever seen. That's up there with Saints playoffs back in 2011. What is it like being in that environment? Because when I watch on TV, I want to go to a game up there for this reason, is because when I watch the game on TV through the broadcast, I feel the energy of the stadium through the screen. I can almost feel like the momentum building, and I can feel it permeate through the screen, and I only feel that from Seattle. What is your vibe like? You've been there, like we talked about, and transitioning that into like how you sense that game, how it started, the 3 and out on offense right after the touchdown was given up. What was your kind of sense of being in that position before, and did you see that kind of trickle over into this game at all?
So I'll be honest, that was my first time going to a game there, and I kind of always thought that the crowd noise stuff was overblown. I thought that it was just, kind of exaggerated. Like we've all been, I remember days at Candlestick when there were 70,000 people there, when it was extremely loud and the energy was insane. But after a quarter, like 2-3 minutes left in the first quarter, so basically after a full quarter of being there, my ears literally were like ringing, and I'm like, all right, like this is actually like a real thing. Like this wasn't over exaggerated. The energy here is insane. And on top of it too, structurally they have it built so that all the noise that they generate, which I do give them respect, like they do generate a good amount of noise, but it's all reflected back down. The acoustics and the way they built that place really does favor if you can generate any kind of buzz within the crowd there, it's going to be amplified more so. So I think the unfortunate thing here was that if you remember, like after the 49ers went, like the Seahawks have been reeling for weeks. They're on this losing streak. The offense can't do anything. And they go 3 and out to start a game against their biggest rival. And it just looks very uncreative. They're, getting shut down, running screenplays and stuff. So it felt like the energy, it was dead quiet in there. Just watching on TV, I wasn't there obviously, but on TV, it sounded like all the energy kind of got sucked out of there. All the fans are starting to think, oh man, here we go again. Like even the team we have ownage over for a decade, we can't even beat them. And that fake punt gave them a jolt like immediately after. I think it kind of prevented it from spiraling into a game where not only the Seahawks fans, but the players are kind of just like, here we go again, man. Same stuff, different week. So I applaud them for that, and I think that it's just, again, you have to kind of acknowledge that sometimes you just get bested, and I think that and Eric makes a really good point. I live near Levi's, and I used to live on the other side of Levi's, over maybe 2 miles from the stadium. and I could literally hear the foghorn they blow when they score touchdowns. So there's like a 7-second TV delay. I could literally hear, if I had my window open at home, I could hear the foghorn before the Niners broke out of the huddle on a given play, because the sound gets out of the stadium and travels that far. I got things loud, but it shouldn't be that loud. And it's because,
Right.
like what Eric mentioned, they have the big open, staircases on both sides of the backside of the stadium. And I think that it is unfortunate that they didn't really plan. They didn't build it in a way that would amplify the crowd noise. Because I've been at games at Levi's where it's has the same kind of vibe as Candlestick, and it's loud and people are really into it. But you don't really get to feel that because half the stadium is so open that all that sound is just trickling out. So yeah, I agree with Eric. It's one thing that's, I have a lot of issues with Levi's, to be honest. I don't think it's very aesthetically pleasing either. I drive by it like almost every day, and it looks like a stadium that's still being constructed, and it's been open for like 8 years. But yeah, I do think that that's one thing that some of these play, like I went to SoFi, I was there for the preseason game covering it. The crowd noise there, it's pretty much an indoor stadium. Like it's open technically, but the sound there is insane. It stays in. Arizona, it's inside, so the sound stays. And it's a little thing, but you do have to wonder how much that, does sort of put the 49ers at a disadvantage when they're going into these hostile environments, and then in their own stadium, you're not going to have that same advantage with the sound pouring out. But Seattle is just a totally different animal, man. That place is just, when it's loud, it's loud. Like I remember going to like playoff Warriors games at Oracle, and that was to me like the loudest venue I had experienced. Seattle definitely like beat that, which I think is extremely hard to do. Anybody who's from the Bay Area, who's a Warriors fan, who remembers going to those games when Oracle used to get, before the tickets kind of got priced out, when the common fan could still go and that place got loud. Seattle was more than that. So yeah, I just I think it's really unfortunate that the 49ers don't share that same advantage when it comes to amplified crowd noise that it seems like all their division rivals have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of feels like if you were a coaching staff of the San Francisco 49ers, I would imagine a key to victory, or a key, is to take the crowd out early. Again, take away the momentum, take away the hope and the belief that they can beat them, because if they were able to get that 3 and out, stop them, immediately drive down at will and score, you immediately zap that energy. We were there at Green Bay week 3. First home game since 2020, the NFC Championship game. It was loud. The vibe was, it was like, okay, everyone was ready. Joe Staley got everyone hyped up with the foghorn. Like it was, the vibe was really solid at Levi's for that game. But what happened? They did not get started early. Green Bay did, and it killed the energy in that stadium for an entire half. It took until that Trey Lance touchdown at the end of the half for the stadium to come back alive. So you can take down a stadium by simply just stopping the opposing team from scoring. And that would hopefully be part of the strategy going into it. But obviously with that quick touchdown, it kind of put the 49ers back into reaction mode rather than being, let's control what we can control. But let's kind of shift gears into some of the positives, and then we'll circle back to some of the negatives, because there are absolutely negatives in a game that the 49ers lost that I think we both believe at the end of the day more than capable of winning. Let's talk about George Kittle. George Kittle's been through the ringer this year. He missed a couple games. You had the fan base wanting to trade him. George Brittle's new nickname that's been developed. He's only blocks. But he was able to come out today with no Deebo Samuel. I'm sorry, on Sunday with no Deebo Samuel. He's able to compile 9 receptions, 181 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Did a lot of that in the first half. What did you see out of George Kittle, and how Kyle Shanahan decided to use him a little bit differently than we have seen throughout the year for the most part?
Well, it just felt like they needed him to have that big game. They didn't really have another viable offensive weapon that they could rely on, especially in the pass game. I do think a lot of the criticism surrounding Kittle and the way he's used and his injury stuff, like it's all so overblown. And it's just people, I don't know if it's just people who are frustrated, like trying to channel their emotions into something they think makes sense, but it never has. Like the guy plays super physical. Like I'm not comparing him to Gronkowski and like their play styles. Rob Gronkowski was the same way. He was a very physical guy, and he'd miss 3 or 4 games every year, and that was just kind of the price you paid when you have a guy who plays with that kind of ferocity and tenacity. And I think a lot of Kittle's injuries have just kind of been fluky, like that foot that he broken foot he had in Seattle last year was like super weird. The knee or the bone chip in the ankle or whatever he had in 2019, like. I don't think it's just like I get it's frustrating for fans to see him as games, but I do think a lot of it too is just kind of fluky bad luck. And then in terms of him being utilized as like a blocker or this and that, like I don't think people understand the advantage you have when you're a defense and you're scheming 2 defensive players around bracketing George Kittle and the reaction you have to make in the moment when he falls back and is blocking. I'm not saying like, oh, every single play, like just deceive the defense by having one of your best players not run routes. But when you sprinkle that in, like it really does create a bit of misdirection and confusion among a defense. And there was a play from that first Seattle game where they came out with a 2 tight end set and Dwelley was next to him. And Kittle stayed in to block and Dwelley ran a seam route and Jimmy hit him for a touchdown. And if you go back and you watch that, the Seattle defense kind of had a moment where they're thrown off because there were multiple guys who were sitting there who were like, what the hell? Like, we have to, my job is to account for George Kittle on this play. Where is he going? And you have Ross Dwelley screaming up you at the seam. So like, I think that they use him in a strategic way that accentuates what he's good at. And unfortunately, if you're having trouble pass blocking, Kittle really does kind of feel like a 6th offensive lineman when he's out there sometimes. So I just wanted to say real quick, I do think that it was very overblown because that's the criticism I see all the time. And I just think that, George Kittle isn't Travis Kelce. He's not a guy who you're going to throw out in the slot, 25 times a game and just basically be an oversized slot receiver. But I think in this game, he really demonstrated what makes him such a special player. And that's what he does with the ball in his hands after the catch. And that one play he had where he runs this little drag route, he's running a crossing route like 4 yards past the line of scrimmage. And he has the speed to get around. Bobby Wagner had a pretty good angle to get him. And I'm sure if Bobby Wagner in the moment thought, Kittle would get out for a gain, 7 of 8 yards, push him out at the sideline. And Kittle is somehow able to bend the edge and then tiptoe down the sideline within, like half an inch of stepping out and turn what would have been, 5-6 yard gain into a, 50+ yard touchdown. So I just think that they did a little bit better job emphasizing getting him the ball in space and allowing him just to be the playmaker that he is. Because I would imagine him and Debo is one of those guys too, but there's very few guys in the league that I think NFL defenders kind of, I don't say they're afraid of tackling, but they're definitely like not looking for, like it's a stressful day to bring them down.
It's kind of like Derrick Henry-esque. Like, exactly. When you're going for a tackle, you better be ready because they'll roll you over if you're not.
They did an effective job because they weren't able to do that with the run game because Seattle is actually very good against the run. So I do think that they did a very good job of, kind of using Kittle as that battering ram to wear down the defense. The unfortunate thing is it feels like every time he has a monster game like this, like they don't end up winning. Like the same thing happened against Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football last year, where it just feels like every time they have to use Kittle and get him 10+ targets and he's getting 150+ yards, that it ends up not being a game that we can really sit here and celebrate because they don't win. And I know more so than any of us, George Kittle wants to win more than he cares about his own stats. So it is kind of unfortunate that we can't sit here and, we still can, but people aren't going to really be openly celebrating the, star tight end having a big day when they lost to their biggest rival. Again, they got swept for however many times in the last, 10 years. But I just think that it was the thing I would have added on is that it reminded me, and I think a lot of other people, just how special of a player George Kittle is. And I think that due to injuries and some other, contributing factors, like to me, I haven't really remembered him having a statement like that since like the Saints game in 2019 when he broke that big run before the game-winning field goal. We're really sitting here in awe of him. Like I remember seeing like Pat McAfee and a few of these big, national media guys and, non-49ers media people just mesmerized by the toe tap touchdown. And I think it's been so long since we've had kind of that signature moment from him. So it was really nice to see him kind of back even though we as 49ers fans know how good he is week to week, it was nice to kind of see him put himself back on the radar and remind people like, hey, I'm still one of the best tight ends and the best offensive weapons in this entire league.
Absolutely, because we also know too, good portion of the fan base who plays fantasy football probably drafted him really high too. So they want to see him rack up those receptions. They don't want to see him blocking in the run game. Although I could see him block nonstop and just be absolutely happy as a clam. I know other people want to see the production. They want to see the Yak King, the guy who broke the record back in 2018. They want to see that production. And I totally understand. And I think there's an opportunity to find a little bit more of a balance to, again, utilize him in the run game while getting him the production. But we also recognize big reason why didn't get, or he got so much production was because Deebo Samuel wasn't there. But what are your thoughts in regards to Brandon Aiyuk, how he was used, because he only came out of that game with 3 receptions and 55 yards. Do you think he could have been used more? Do you think there was plays that got left out on the field? What is your kind of overall look at Brandon Aiyuk? Obviously, if we win the game, we don't really care. It's not a big deal. And I still don't think it's totally a big deal, but still three receptions, 55 yards. What did you see in the game? And is there an opportunity to get Brandon Aiyuk more touches and more production moving forward?
Yeah, I think there is, but I do also think that he had some opportunities that he, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Like they ran a little screen pass to him that he dropped in the backfield that I don't think was a bad ball. I just think he had his eyes upfield and he was looking at the defender he had to make miss before he secured the ball. And that's a mistake, a lot of receivers make. I think it was Byron Pringle. I was watching the Sunday night game. He did the same thing. He had like 15 yards of open grass in front of him and he dropped a screen pass on the Kansas City Chiefs. It happens. It's not like, oh God, Aiyuk is just making these mistakes. He's back in the doghouse. The other mistake would have been, I don't know if it's a mistake necessarily, but that ball, that wasn't the best ball that he had to go up for, and he came down with that. They initially ruled a catch, fumble, recovery, and then they ruled incomplete. It was the right call. He didn't make a football move. And I think there's been a few times this season I can think of where Aiyuk makes this incredible acrobatic catch, and then for whatever reason, either coughs the ball up or can't secure it all the way through the ground. And he'll get better with time doing that. But I also think, they didn't shy away from throwing to him. Jimmy hit him on that, he threw outside the numbers. It was like 1st and 20. I think he hit him for like an 18-yard gain late in the fourth quarter. So there seems to be a little bit more of a willingness to get him the ball that wasn't there earlier. So I think that's encouraging in, like in a vacuum, if you look at it, like it's like, okay, it's good. We're getting this guy, who we all know is talented the ball more. But I also just think that it depends on how the game is going. And, ultimately, it matters who's delivering the football too. And I don't want to, open that up till you want to discuss it, but I do think there's an issue with who is delivering the football now. And I think that there's a lot of plays being left on the field, and Brandon Aiyuk isn't the only player suffering as a result of that. But again, that's, an entirely different discussion. But I think that he has the chance to finish this year strong. And then hopefully, Brad plays Dynasty. A lot of guys who do Dynasty football, like the third-year breakout is like a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. And I think that Brandon Aiyuk is kind of a guy who's poised for that, where he had the really big first year, kind of hit the sophomore slump. And then he has a chance to really come out and, ideally, it's going to be with Trey Lance under center next year, be a really complimentary piece in a trio with Kittle and Deebo, where maybe they can change up the personnel a bit. They can, run things that he's a little bit more comfortable with. The one thing I would add with Aiyuk too is that early in the year, I forget if it was just us talking or if we did a show or something, but we did talk about how maybe he wasn't getting as many reps because he wasn't run blocking as well as he could have been. And I do think that the last few weeks he's done so much better, and he's been so much more of like a willing blocker in the run game that maybe that's part of the reason why Kyle kind of was giving him a hard time earlier. And it's not very glamorous. It's easier to sit there and be like, oh, he's in the doghouse, or he just can't do this, he can't do that. But when it's something as simple as like, hey, you're not run blocking the way I want you to. Mohamed Sanu's a 10-year vet. He knows how to do it. For whatever reason, Trent Sherfield's knowing how, like I can see that.
Juwan Jennings
has very tenacious run blocker. And that's the thing for like Kyle Shanahan wants to run the ball. Like, I'm sure Kyle watched that Monday night game last night and was just salivating watching New England win the game and they threw the ball 3 times. So you have to be able to run block in this offense. And I just think that it's either a major coincidence or it's, connected that as soon as Aiyuk starts getting the ball again and he started, to be featured again, it correlates directly to when he started looking much better on tape as a run blocker.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to get into the quarterback conversation, but I am saving that for the end because I know Jordan has a lot of thoughts on that position, and so I definitely want to save those for the end. And before we we're not even close to the end, but if you guys I see you guys in the chat, you guys are awesome. If you guys could go ahead and like this video, get this thing shot up out into the algorithm, we'll get more people in here and we'll vibe and continue to vibe about the 49ers. And as we continue to move forward, let's stick with the offensive side before bouncing over to the defense. What have you seen from Elijah Mitchell? Obviously 22 carries for 66 yards, only 3 yards a clip, but he did get a touchdown. What is kind of your assessment and evaluation of Elijah Mitchell throughout the year?
I think that he started the year just as I would expect a day 3 rookie to start the year. He had some big plays, but he also left a lot of yards on the field. And I thought that he had an issue early on with his vision on a lot of the zone, outside zone stuff they were running. I thought he was cutting back at times when he didn't need to. But I do think since the Colts game, he's improved immensely in that regard. Mike McDaniel, the offensive coordinator, basically came out in a press conference and said, yeah, earlier in the season, he was leaving yards on the field, but he's gotten better. So that made me feel a little bit more validated that it wasn't something that I was just, seeing that wasn't happening. I do think that there was a genuine issue there.
Kittle has also spoke on that as well.
Yeah, and he's a 6th round pick. That's a rookie. Like he's going to have
Right.
some growing pains and some adjustments. And, we talked about it in a space last night. When you're spoiled watching somebody as gifted as Raheem Mostert is, who's able to feel those zone blocks out in the open field and have the instinct and know when to cut and have the vision to know what hole to hit, and then hit it with the extreme speed and tenacity he does, anybody else is going to come in after him. It's going to feel a little weird. There's going to be an adjustment period. But I think that he's been everything that you could ask for out of a 6th round rookie. I think that he's carved a nice role for himself on the team going forward. I do think also Seattle pretty much Seattle has played the same way for years against the 49ers. They don't respect them throwing the ball. They sell out to stop the run, and they have, they're not the greatest pass rushing unit, but they have a pretty formidable D line against the run. And Bobby Wagner is still one of the best linebackers in the league, if not, in the conversation for literally the best. Jordan Brooks is good. As much as we all clown on Jamal Adams, he is really good in the box. He made a couple big plays before he got hurt. So I just think that the Seattle's strength against the run and their willingness to sell out and dare the 49ers to beat them another way, I didn't expect them to have a good, time running the ball in this game, which is why I was encouraged to see some of the short passing game stuff that did work and some of the yards after catch that was generated. But I don't sit here and say, oh, no, like this is all on, Elijah Mitchell or the O-line couldn't block or the play calling was bad. I just think it really comes down to Seattle was willing to take the chance on the 49ers beating them with Jimmy Garoppolo's arm and selling out to stop the run. And as we saw, that just frankly didn't happen.
Absolutely. And sticking kind of with the run game, what did you see out of the offensive line? Obviously, Mike McGlinchey is no longer there. Tom Compton is the starter as of right now. We're going to see how that continues to evolve. But what was your overall thoughts of the offensive line and maybe a couple of those plays that kind of reared its head ugly there at the end?
I thought that there weren't really too many plays where they got really good push up front where we got kind of accustomed to the last couple of weeks where they were just bullying opposing fronts in the run game. But I thought that they really stood out pass blocking, and I thought that it was really unfortunate. There were a couple plays where they gave Jimmy felt like 5+ seconds to throw, which is an eternity against an NFL pass rush. And I just think that it's really unfair that they have been scapegoated for so long as a problem and they can't protect. And if he has time to throw, he's going to be really good. The Niners have been, by most metrics, have been a top 10, if not a top 5 pass blocking unit all season. And when you go back and you watch game film, it correlates with what those numbers say. So I thought they did a really good job giving the passing game adequate time. I think the run game was kind of a wash because I don't think they were getting, beaten so badly up front that they couldn't run anything. But I do think that Seattle held their own against them, which you have to tip your cap to. They had a good game plan and they executed. In regards to Tom Compton, it's a bummer because he did play. He had a much better game last week. He had like one play in that Vikings game that I thought was not great. But other than that, he played a really clean game. In this game, he wasn't objectively bad for every single snap, but he did have a couple of big plays and big and bad way. He had a couple plays that were magnified in big moments.
Yeah.
The safety, Vish made a really good point that maybe, and Rich echoed it too, that maybe you don't drop back on 3rd and 8 from your own 2-yard line. Even though Compton did get beat pretty bad on that play, you're kind of putting your, journeyman backup right tackle not in the best position to succeed, and that's something that coaching does need to be accountable for. And then obviously the last play of the game, he got beat pretty bad, and Dunlap was able to get his hands up and tip a ball that looked like it was going for 6. Trent Sherfield, the pick play they ran looked like it worked to perfection. As much as I don't think Jimmy was great in this game, I do believe that he could have executed a simple 5-yard ball over the middle there. So
Right.
I think with like a guy like Compton, it's unfortunate because he has a couple of really bad plays. And again, he could have had, I haven't had the chance to go back and watch every single snap and take my notes like I do. I'll probably do that in the next couple of days. But he could have had 5 or 6 plays in that game that were really good, where he was dominating his rep and he was, giving the adequate time to throw. Again, there were plays where the whole offensive line looked good. So I know that he had good plays in the game. The problem is, and it's the story as old as time with offensive linemen, if you get beat bad in a big moment, that's all people are going to remember. And it felt like that was kind of the takeaway with Compton. And I know people want Jalen Moore out there, but I do think one thing that we need to think about is that with Jalen Moore, he's a guy who played on the left side for years. He didn't really get adequate reps on the right side in camp. And Brad can tell you, like, when you're, when you generate that kind of, mental body connection where you're doing thousands and thousands of reps and you're, going into your kick step on the left side, it's really hard to just go on the right side and basically do the opposite of whatever you've been doing for years. And it takes time to acclimate. And there's some offensive linemen who are so skilled that they can do that. But it's unfair to expect not only a rookie, but a guy, again, who was a day 3 pick, where you're just feeling kind of, you should be feeling good that he was good enough to make the team. But at the same time, it's unrealistic that he's just going to come in and be great. So I do, as much as it's frustrating, I understand why Tom Compton might be out there. And again, it's not about that Jalen Moore isn't good enough. It could just be a comfortability thing. Like, it takes time to adjust to the NFL level. And then they're going to, being moved to the complete other side of the offensive line. Like, that's just a lot for a rookie to take in. And even a 1st-round pick would struggle with that. But a guy, again, who is a day 3 guy, there's a reason why he was taken where he was taken. And that doesn't mean he can't be a good player. It just means that we have to temper our expectations in terms of development and when he what you really can expect from him contributing right away. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Tom Compton out there again. And I do think that I would add Tom Compton has looked really good in the run game. I think that's another reason why Shanahan is comfortable with him. That's part of the reason why I've defended McGlinchey for so long. So I think it would be unfair to not do the same for Tom Compton. But unfortunately, when you're averaging 2.8 yards per carry and you're getting beat in some big moments, people don't really want to hear about how good you were in the run game. So it's just kind of an unfortunate situation where hopefully he can bounce back next week. But as a whole, I do think the offensive line played a pretty good. They didn't cost the 49ers this game, and they didn't put them in a position where they were a liability. I thought that they did their job adequately and that they, did whatever they could to put them in a spot to win.
I agree 100% with that. Everything you just said. Tom Compton had I'm going to just say 1.5 bad plays, because at a certain point, when a defensive end is reading a quarterback's eyes, they understand the situation at hand, that it's going to be a short, quick throw, likely to the right side. Dunlap just stood in the lane and jumped up. I mean, that's hard to defend as an offensive lineman. All what they tell you is, if a D lineman goes up, you punch him in the chest and you try to get him on the ground. But at a certain point, if they're timing their jump with the throw, you can't really do anything. It's not like offensive linemen have eyes in the back of their head. So I don't necessarily fault Tom Compton for that batted pass from Dunlap. I give the credit to Dunlap. In that particular situation, I thought you made a really good point about how the situation throwing at a shotgun in your end zone with a guy like Tom Compton, who struggles with athletic pass rushers. It is like, it's apparent. It's one of the things that I talked about on my pregame show. That was a matchup that we were going to be watching for those specific situations, because if you go back to week 4, Dunlap gave McGlinchey a fit here or there with his pass rush moves. It doesn't matter that Dunlap only played 7 snaps. 2 of them were extremely impactful. But overall, I thought the overall offensive line played they have been, I think, one of the more solid units on the entire roster. And they're like you said, if they make a mistake, it's going to be amplified. Even like that one play where they had Brunskill out in space, and the broadcaster was like, "Oh, bad block by the offensive lineman." When in reality, it was Brunskill was in phase, in leverage, and Elijah Mitchell cut towards the defender, and basically the defender's like wide open at that point. So I don't put that on Brunskill, but it comes with the territory. Overall, I think the offensive line has been great considering what we saw in 2020. And I think a lot of people have a hard time compartmentalizing and comparing how bad this offensive line unit was with an inexperienced center, inexperienced guard play, a struggling McGlinchey, and how much it has improved in 2021, even with Tom Compton in there. So I've got no real problems with the O line. I haven't done the full tape study yet, so hopefully I can get in there and really get into the nuts and bolts of the O line. But kind of transitioning over to the defensive side, tell me a little bit about Aziz Al-Shaair. He had 11 tackles, 5 of them for assists, and he had half a sack. He had the insane fumble right there at the goal line, which probably would have been one of the most epic plays in this series if the 49ers were able to go down the field and win the game. Tell me a little bit about Aziz in this game and just Aziz overall in the year.
He's been really good all season. He's been one of the best players on the defense all season. He's just a really good linebacker. He's a starting level linebacker in the NFL, and the 49ers need to do whatever they can to make sure they retain him, as he is a restricted free agent in this coming offseason. And I believed, and I've believed for a while, that he should be starting next to Fred Warner when they go into sub packages because of how frequently the NFL now is so pass happy. You're going to be in sets with 2 linebackers far more than you're going to be in a base defense with 3. And I just think that Al-Shaair's complete game is something I would take over Dre Greenlaw's. And this isn't any disrespect towards Dre Greenlaw. I just simply think Al-Shaair is the better player. And unfortunately, the NFL isn't about coddling feelings. It's about playing who your better players are. And I think that's why Shanahan basically came out and said it's going to be really hard for Greenlaw to win his job back because Al-Shaair's played so well. And every week it seems like he's getting better. So I understand people have this connection to Greenlaw, and he's had a couple big moments. He's had the interceptions and tackles and all that stuff. But Al-Shaair is simply the better player. I got a lot of pushback for that when I said that a couple months ago, a few weeks ago. I think finally people are coming around and seeing that, wow, this guy's actually very good. So it makes me very happy that he's finally getting the recognition he deserves. He's just a fantastic player. And I think another thing I would add is that the 49ers, for as much as they have missed on some draft picks and they've made some personnel errors, they have done a really good job getting production and impact value from guys that they bring in as undrafted free agents. We saw it with Kendrick Bourne. We saw it with Matt Breida. We saw it with we've seen it still with Jeff Wilson. But on defense too, Emmanuel Mosley has been one of their better players on defense too. He was an undrafted guy that they brought in and developed. We saw it with Al-Shaair clearly. So they've done a really good job of getting these guys that are undrafted that they can kind of, sift through scheme fits a little bit better. You don't have to worry as much about, value and whatnot, because it's pretty much, at that point, you're not, reaching for anybody. So I do think that the 49ers do deserve some credit for developing guys like Al-Shaair, but Al-Shaair also deserves the credit for doing the work. It's not like the 49ers are doing everything for him. But I just think it's a success story that needs to be highlighted because of how frequently we discuss the things that they miss when it comes to roster building and personnel management. And we hear like, oh, they don't know how to coach players. They don't know how to develop players. And it's just simply not true because there's too many success stories that would contradict that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of his, and I hope that the 49ers find a way to retain him. I think that he plays with an intensity and a physicality that you just can't teach guys, that you just kind of have to inherently possess. And those are the kind of guys I would want on my football team, that are just able to not only play with that level of intensity, but also play smart and not be a liability as a result. So yeah, I'm a big Aziz Al-Shaair fan. When I was covering training camp, I mentioned I thought he was one of the better players on the field for a few days. So it makes me very happy to see that wasn't just a flash in the pan, and it wasn't just a Guy looked really good in August and then faded away during the season. He's incrementally gotten better every single week, and he's only 25 years old. So, he could be a huge impact player for the 49ers for the next half decade or so if they decide to retain him, which I think they have to do. Like, him and DJ Jones are both guys that are on expiring deals or who aren't locked up next season that you can't let get out the door. You have to do whatever you can to retain those guys, and I really hope that the 49ers find a way to do that.
Absolutely. And if we had to ask GM Jordan to make the GM call here, and it's between re signing Dre Greenlaw and re signing Aziz Al Shair, one potentially can get traded. You keep the other. What are you keeping? Who are you keeping? Who are you trading?
I'm 1000% keeping Al Shair, and I would trade Greenlaw. And I understand people are like, why don't you keep both in case of injury or in case, you want to run more base personnel and stuff. But Greenlaw has 1 year left on his deal. I don't see a reason, unless he's willing to come back on a, team friendly deal that you can work out, then absolutely keep him. But I just think that there's so much value because of the ability to move on from him. He has 1 year left on his deal. You could get maybe a 4th, 5th round pick for him, draft another linebacker in this draft. And we know the 49ers, after that trade up for Lance, they can use all the draft capital they could get. So yeah, I would 100% keep Al Shair. I would move on from Greenlaw. And again, that's no disrespect to Drake Greenlaw. I just think that I think Al Shair is the better player. I felt that way for a while. And I think Greenlaw is good enough that you can get value for him. And unfortunately, the 49ers are in a spot where they can't just re-sign all of their players like they did this past year on 1 year deals. And you're going to have to start getting some value and bringing in some guys on rookie deals. Part of what made Dre Greenlaw so special when Quan went out in 2019 was that he was a guy contributing on a rookie deal, which allowed them, a lot of flexibility elsewhere. So I just think that they need to start pivoting for that next. You need to start hitting these cycles where after the 3rd year for a player like that, you bring in a new guy who you have under team control for 4 years on a cheaper deal. And you're not going to hit every time. It's unrealistic to expect that, but you do need to start, taking those chances and swinging for the fences a bit. And the more draft picks you have, the higher likelihood you have that you're going to hit on a few of them. You're just kind of playing the odds at that point when you give yourself more chances to take on players like that.
Absolutely. And this year is going to be a little bit different than last year because the cap is going up. They're expected to jump 26 million over this year, which is basically a Jimmy Garoppolo contract. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers maneuver this offseason. That's why you guys got to stay locked in on Jordan and I. We run the offseason at this point. So we're going to be breaking all that stuff down as it gets to it. We're going to be talking free agents, draft, all that kind of stuff. The 49ers only have 33 players currently right now under contract in 2022. So the offseason, although we don't have that, glorious first round pick, there's a lot of moves that are going to be made, re-signing, trades, who comes, who goes. This offseason is going to be nuts. And we're also going to be able to see what it looks like to be built around a specific type of archetype at quarterback. And so we're going to see what happens. We got free agents in Lake and Tomlinson, Daniel Brunskill. There's guys, Raheem Mostert. There's guys that are free agents all over the place. So next year, this offseason is going to be insane. So that's why you got to stay locked in on Jordan and I. We're going to be all over it. So as we continue to move forward, though, let's kind of shift gears to the defensive backs. And I'll let you drive where you want to go just based on defensive backs.
I thought that they played well. Diamador Lenore had a couple plays where I thought that he allowed DK Metcalf to get, like, it seemed like what they were trying to do. So if you go back to the earlier in the game, they tried to take a deep shot to Metcalf, and basically what Mosley did was he got underneath Metcalf as he went up to high point a ball and basically just gave him nowhere to come in bounds with the football, which is extremely high IQ football. It's great technique. You're not going to be flagged for that, but you physically are giving the receiver nowhere to come in bounds. And it felt like they were kind of playing to prevent it seemed like they were trying to play to prevent the Seahawks from taking shots deep. Like on the play that DK caught on, I think it was like 3rd and 8 or something like that, 3rd and 13. Whenever he caught it just shy of the goal line, it felt like pre-snap Lenore was lined up trying to take away the outside leverage, seeding the inside leverage with what I'm assuming was probably some sort of, assumption there would be help over the top or just playing the odds of there being more traffic over the middle of the field. But basically what happened is that DK burned him, got upfield, and Russ threw a great ball between Lenore and Tart. And I don't blame Tart for not getting, it's not,
Right.
it's a better play by Seattle's offense. So I think that Lenore, it may have looked bad on a couple plays, and then Norman had the ball. It's to me one of the funniest things in football is when a defensive back does absolutely nothing to affect the outcome of a given play, and the ball gets overthrown or a receiver drops a ball, and the defensive back starts going around and they do the like incomplete, and they get all hyphy and they're running around getting all
Ooh,
yeah. Oh, dude,
no.
it's so, yeah.
Clamps.
It's so funny to me because I get it. Like these guys are at an extreme disadvantage. It's extremely tough to cover in the NFL. But I thought that was like so funny that like Russ overthrows a ball to DK, and the first thing Norman does is hop up and do the like incomplete and like
no good. He got toasted.
Yeah,
toasted.
Yeah, and it's not just him. It's the defensive backs do that, and to me, it's one of the funniest parts of watching football. I always crack up when it happens. But I don't think they were that bad, and I think Dante Johnson actually played a pretty clean game. His biggest mistake was just that stupid helmet to helmet penalty when K1 already, I forget who it was. I think it was Everett for the Seahawks. He had him wrapped up already short of the sticks, and Johnson came in and hit him helmet to helmet. They gave him 15 yards. But in terms of just coverage, I thought he looked good. And I think Dante Johnson gets, just dumped on all the time. And I don't think it's fair because I think that Dante Johnson is a guy who, for what you're asking him to be a depth piece at corner. You're asking him not to be a starter, not to be a star. And you're asking him to be a guy that can come in who's, a fourth, fifth corner, maybe a special teams contributor. And I think in that role, he's completely fine. And I thought he played fine yesterday. I just think it's unfair that people treat him like he's supposed to be like Deion Sanders and he's getting torched out there. Like he's a depth piece for a reason. And I thought he played very well given that. I also think that losing Mosley is going to hurt them a lot. He's been really, really good this year. And I don't want to state the obvious here. Like I joke, I sent out like a very sarcastic tweet about this yesterday, but like being without both of your starting cornerbacks from week one, like that's just not ideal. It's not good. It's no place any team wants to be in. Is it going to cost you games outright? No, you can still scheme around it, but it takes away a lot of what the 49ers want to do. And I think that it really eliminates their ability to consistently go to cover one. It eliminates the ability to run a lot more man on the outside, where they can maybe be a little bit more exotic with their blitzes and pressures. So the Mosley injury hurts, but I still have faith that they can get it done. It just, I actually thought the secondary played really well. If you go back and you watch, like Russ threw for 230 yards. Like it's not like he was out there lighting them up. I thought that they made big plays in big moments. I thought that given the lack of the pass rush getting home in the second half, they kept the 49ers in the game for a decent portion of that second half. And I just think that unfortunately you see stuff like Norman, getting, celebrating after getting torched and stuff like that. And people just, or people see Dante Johnson, he's just like a meme at this point. So people are like, oh, the secondary is awful and costing them games. Right. I really don't think it's been that way. I think the secondary has actually been one of the the bigger strengths of the defense. So I just hope that they find a way to parlay that into some kind of ability to stay afloat, because I don't think they're going to go out and shut down Cincinnati's skill position group. They're way too talented. But I do think they're capable of playing at a level high enough that they're not going to outright cost the 49ers the game, where it's just like, all right, pack it in, guys. We have no chance because our secondary is getting torched. Like they're much better than that. And I think that they deserve more credit than they've gotten.
Absolutely. I think that's a great assessment. I just, I love that at least Kyle Shanahan talked about at least the younger guys needing to push the older guys like Josh Norman, because if you watch me, I'm over the Josh Norman experiment. I've been for a while, so it is what it is. I would prefer to see Dante Johnson and Diamador Lenore out there if we have to, or I don't know. It's a bit of a hard situation at this point with all the injuries. It is kind of an all hands on deck situation, so beggars can't be choosy at this point. So If we got to rock with who we got to rock with, it is what it is. I do have a little bit of sympathy for Diamador getting thrown cold into a game situation where he immediately has to go up against DK Metcalf after really not playing for meaningful snaps at cornerback for quite some time. So hopefully with maybe a full week of preparation, if they are going to decide that Diamador or Ambry Thomas gets to start, hopefully a week of preparation as practicing and preparing as a starter will translate into a better outcome. Obviously, we understand Lenore. They kind of were like, all right, the kid's a little bit over his skis. Let's get Dante Johnson in there. So it'll be interesting to see how that really plays out as we go throughout. There's 5 games left. It's going to be a war of attrition until the end for all teams across the league. So it's going to be interesting to see who's the last man standing. This is going to be kind of a quicker episode than Jordan and I typically do. We could talk for literally hours, like literally hours about this stuff. But I do want to get Jordan's comments, thoughts about Jimmy Garoppolo, specifically in this game, his performance, what Jimmy Garoppolo is, and just kind of overall thoughts. Can the 49ers make the playoffs with Jimmy Garoppolo? Do you think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the reason they don't make the playoffs? How are you viewing Jimmy Garoppolo? Because he's so volatile in the sense that we get the picks to the underneath linebackers, but then we also get the drive at the end of the game where he just marches down and puts us in position to potentially tie and or win the game. I want to know what Jordan thinks of Jimmy Garoppolo at this point.
I've had the same opinion of Jimmy for a very long time. I don't think that he is a very good quarterback. I think that he has the physical talent to be an average, quarterback. I think that you could definitely do worse than him, but I just think that the inconsistencies kill this team far too often. He's extremely volatile. It's a roller coaster ride that I would like to get off as soon as possible, because you get these just extremely boneheaded throws or lack of throws where he's leaving guys that are open on the field, leaving points, yards on the field every week. And it's like my biggest thing with him is that, like, so many of these mistakes that he's making and throws he's overthrowing and reads he's not seeing, it's not just like a one-time thing where it's like, all right, like, because people are like, every quarterback does this. Like, no, I promise you, every quarterback does not do this. Like, I don't watch every single snap of every team in the NFL, but I watch film from a lot of teams. And yeah, they'll miss throws here and there, but they don't make the same exact mistakes week after week, year after year. And that's the biggest problem with Jimmy, is that there were multiple times in this game, like when he overthrew Juszczyk, when Juszczyk was running up the far hashes on the left side, he missed that same exact throw against the Rams last season. That interception to Quandre Diggs, he threw the same exact pick against New England last year. And it just gets to a point where it's like, we're seeing the same stuff over and over and over again. But at the same time, he comes back, and just like you mentioned, that last drive, he throws that back shoulder ball to Juszczyk in his back hip pocket with Jordan Brooks draped all over him. Like, that's a throw that like Aaron Rodgers makes or Tom Brady makes, and Jimmy makes it. So it's like, it kills me because this guy is so inconsistent. Like, if he was able to do that and then have like a couple bad balls a game, hey, every quarterback does it. But it's not just that. It's the fact that every single week when I go through this film, there's 7, 8, 9 plays, it feels like, where it's like the guy was either objectively terrible or he just didn't see something. He didn't get a ball to a guy within his progression. And I'm not one of these people that's going to sit there and be like, oh, there's a receiver that's nobody's near. I make sure to go through and check. Like, I fortunately have, the ability to check the install. So I will go through and look, and he's missing guys in his progression. It isn't just like, I hate when people just like, are like, oh, there was an open receiver on one part of the field, he didn't hit him there. Like, if you're actually going through your progressions and that person isn't within the first couple, hey, I get it. It happens. But the problem with Jimmy is that he's not seeing guys within his progression. He rarely hits guys on alert routes. When you're basically supposed to be cognizant, hey, if there's a guy running free 20 yards downfield, you drop all your other progressions and you hit him. He doesn't do that. He frequently misses his hot reads too. And it gets to the point where it's like, he makes too many mental mistakes. And I just saw Matt H said in the chat, like, that's the best way to like put it. Like, physically, he's not a bad quarterback. Like, yeah, he doesn't have the greatest arm in the world. He's not super mobile, but he has the talent to get it done. He has that quick release, but mentally he's making mistakes in year 8 that an 8-year vet shouldn't make. And it's just, again, I'm sick of it. I have had enough. I don't want to sit here and just whine and complain, but I am going to be very thrilled when I don't have to watch that man play football every Sunday. And again, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful or just sit here and say he sucks. It's just the inconsistencies. And again, I equate it to a roller coaster. The ups and downs are too much for me to take. I would almost rather have just a game managing quarterback. That's not that you may not get some of the highs you get with Jimmy, but you're also not going to get the lows. I've had enough, dude. Like I every week I feel like I say that, but I think after they're winning games, because he played really bad in the Minnesota game too, and nobody wanted to talk about that because the 49ers won, and you're just a hater if you talk about how bad he is. But it's so funny, they lose a game a week later and everybody wants to talk about how bad he is. He played almost the same in both of those games, but the difference is, and that's my biggest thing too, is that people always talk about, well, they win when he plays and they lose when he doesn't. Like CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, Brian Hoyer, guess what? They're not good quarterbacks. There's a reason why they're not starting. There's a reason why some of them had trouble finding roster spots. Like, they're not good quarterbacks. So saying that Jimmy Garoppolo, who I believe is capable of being an NFL starting quarterback, is better than those guys, like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, yes, we all are aware of that. That doesn't change the fact that he isn't the driving force behind them winning. And I just think that we've seen for so long with Kyle Shanahan and with this system, with McVay, with LaFleur, going back to, Kubiak and Kyle's dad, if you just get a competent NFL player at the quarterback position, you will have success in that offense. So I don't think this is a situation where it's like, oh man, they win so much with this guy, you better be careful what you wish for. Like, no, dude, I watch enough tape every week to understand and feel like I just want no parts of this anymore going forward. So I hope that he finds a way to. I think he's capable of, getting them to a playoff spot. I think he's capable of managing a game and making throws when he needs to. Because that's the most frustrating part too, is that he'll have these just awful throws on early downs. He'll miss guys. He'll have reads that are right there he doesn't see. And then on third down, it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and they're in shotgun, and they go empty or something, and the defense knows they're going to throw the ball, and he converts and he makes these throws when he needs to. So it's like, it's extremely frustrating because I don't want to sit here and just act like he's just so terrible and he can't get it done ever and he's so bad, because it's just simply not true. But I am just so over every week seeing the same mistakes happen again and again and again and again. And I just think that it's very evident that the 49ers probably felt similarly with how much they were willing to give up to draft a young quarterback. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, Trey Lance needs to start right now, because I just think it's way too late in the season for that. You pretty much have to finish the year with Jimmy. But I made a joke. I tweeted earlier this week, like, if I see one report from like Peter King or one of these guys talking about how Jimmy Garoppolo might be there in 2022, like maybe the 49ers keep him, I am going to launch my phone into the sun. I am literally going to take my phone and punt it like Andy Lee during his All-Pro season and launch that thing 60 yards into the middle of the street and hope it gets run over by a semi-truck, because I just can't take it anymore, man. I am just so done with hearing about, like, hey, we get it. This is his year. They'll redshirt Lance. If he comes back next year, the 49ers deserve everything bad that will come from bringing him back and having him start next season. So hopefully it doesn't happen. But yeah, I'll end my rant on that. I'm so over it, man.
I feel it. And I want to follow up another question. Do you feel like, and I think this is important, I think it's been a talking point that we've seen in a couple places, but do you think Jimmy Garoppolo handcuffs the offense and what Kyle wants to do, what they want to execute, what they want to do in certain situations? Do you feel that is actually the case?
Yeah, I do. And I think that it's like it's an interesting debate to have, because I think Jimmy's biggest problem is that when he turns his back to a defense, which is what happens when you run play action from under center, which is a staple of what Kyle does, you're going to turn your back to the defense for a second. And he looks like he struggles a lot as of late when he's turning his back to the defense off of these play action looks, which is why I think the 49ers started running a predominantly, started running most of their play action out of shotgun, where he was facing a defense the entire time. Because I think, again, Jimmy's problem isn't necessarily his physical talent. It's his mental
it's a mental capacity and processing, which is the direct link to consistency.
Yeah, and I think that he struggles to read NFL defenses. Like, I believe that, and
I agree.
I have no problem saying that. I just think that he has a problem consistently. Like, I'm sure there's some plays where he does do it, but I think consistently he struggles to read NFL defenses, and I think it amplifies even more in that split second when he turns his back to a defense and he's getting something different post snap than he saw pre snap. I think he doesn't execute very well in those spots. So I think he does limit what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, but then it becomes the debate of, is it on Kyle Shanahan to start doing things that are more suited for Jimmy Garoppolo rather than trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole by having a guy who clearly can't execute what you want to execute at a high level consistently, which is what I think he did to an extent. Again, they went to shotgun looks a lot and they started having success. They were winning more games when he did that. But I do think that it also is kind of like, how did it take them this long to see that? And were they not able to see that right away? I know a lot of us were very excited about Jimmy in 2017, but we also weren't seeing the practice reps. And the thing that I've heard for years, and a lot of people who I trust who you cover the team or who have good info, have heard that he's an abysmal practice player. And Brad and I have seen him in training camp. Like we
saw with our own eyes.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but especially like during the week and stuff. And you have to wonder, like, if they've been seeing that themselves for years and they decided to pay him and keep him, and they decided even after drafting a quarterback to keep him again, like at a certain point, like you have to kind of like you're kind of enabling that at that. Like, like Jimmy is what he is. Like, I'm not going to be upset at him for not just magically changing. I would be more inclined to place the blame on the front office and the coaching staff that's acutely aware of his limitations and struggles, which is why they that's another thing is that people act like, oh, well, Kyle loves Jimmy. John Lynch loves Jimmy. Like, I'm sure they love Jimmy the person, but if they love Jimmy the player, they wouldn't have mortgaged 3 first-round picks to draft his replacement. And the fact that they did that, but still decided to keep him, I think is a bigger indictment on them than it ever will be on Jimmy. And the fact that they're so reluctant to cut ties with a guy who clearly isn't a long-term answer is more concerning in itself. But we could talk about that for a very long time. But I just think that, again, it's more so on them than it is at him at this point. And people get so mad. Like, dude, if somebody offered me $26 million to be mediocre at whatever I did, I would take it and run. Like, I don't blame Jimmy at all for doing that. Are you kidding me? Like, he'd be stupid not. Like, what do people expect him to be like, you know what? Actually, guys, I feel really
that's
bad.
Too much guaranteed money.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I played really poorly in Seattle. Maybe you give me half my game check this week. Like, I'm sorry, that's never how it will work. And if he did do that, I would question his, it's unfortunate. And that's why, again, I just come back to, hopefully we have like a month left of this, maybe a couple extra games in the playoffs. Who knows what happens? And then it's done. It's over. We can thank him. We can wish him well. And he goes to Pittsburgh, New Orleans, or one of these other teams, and he can become I don't want to say their problem because that sounds very disrespectful, but he can become their roller coaster ride. We'll send Jimmy to a new theme park and we'll be done with him.
So I think that's a good transition here, and we're going to end it here on the Trey Lance conversation, because this is a question that has been asked to me. I'm sure it's been asked to you quite a bit. Do we see Trey Lance this year? And I'll preface it this way, because Kyle Shanahan has said this before, and I personally believe it at this point. He has said we're not going to see Trey Lance until the 49ers are eliminated from the playoffs. Even so, with that being said, do you still think there's a possible range of outcome that we do see Trey Lance take over within these next 5 games? Or how do you kind of envision that? Do you think they're just going to ride Jimmy into the sunset and we'll see what happens in the offseason?
Unfortunately, no, I don't think they will. And I think that Kyle kind of came out and said it when he talked about how it was messing up his rhythm as a play caller, because you get presented different fronts when you have a dynamic running quarterback, a quarterback who's maybe a little bit more willing to take deep shots. Maybe they're playing different. Maybe they're playing a little bit more aggressive coverages because Trey Lance is a rookie and he might try to take chances that Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't. So I think that comment that he made was very telling. And I just think that the 49ers are in a spot now where even if they only win the Atlanta and Houston games, which they should, they still are in a really good spot to make the playoffs. So I think the Minnesota game was kind of the nail in the coffin for any, chance of seeing Trey Lance come out this season, because the 49ers should realistically be in the playoff hunt. And honestly, I don't really blame them at this point either for that. I think it's actually better. I understand people want Trey Lance to get game reps, but I do think it's better to give him a full off season of being the guy with the number one offense, because it's extremely difficult to they're not giving Trey Lance reps with the ones, as far as I know, during the week in practice. So it's really unfair to just have him go out and be like, oh, here, get these live game reps, throwing the ball to guys you have, you don't have time to even throw.
Go out with this offensive line that you never practice with and see what happens.
It's unrealistic. And I understand fans want to see him. I get it. But if we're just talking practically, It just doesn't work
Right.
out that way. And I hate to say, like, patience kind of is something that needs to be key here, because if he does have that full offseason, the offensive line has a full, offseason to get used to blocking for a running quarterback. The receivers are able to build that rapport with him. They're able to kind of build an offense a little bit more tailored to what he wants to do. I just think that it'll work out better. And I just think also, I don't think he's been very good, but I have to, if I'm being completely objective and removing my emotion from it, like, I don't think Jimmy's been so bad that it's like, all right, like, he has to go, like, Trey needs to play
Right.
right now.
That's why Jimmy's
Um,
still starting
yeah,
at
that's why he's
quarterback,
still
is because he
playing.
has
And
some redeeming qualities.
yeah, and as talented as I think Trey Lance is, and I think he has a very bright future if he's able to maximize on his physical abilities and be the quarterback that I think he's capable of being. Just from what I saw, and it was months ago, he could have gotten a lot better since then. But in training camp, he was late on a lot of reads. He was a little bit behind with some stuff. And I think he understands the playbook and he understands the verbiage, and he's able to take in a play call from Shanahan, reciprocate it to, or, relay it to the offense, understands that, which is very difficult. That's a hard skill for a lot of rookies in this league.
Yes.
When you hear guys talking about absorbing the playbook, generally it is picking up the verbiage and being able to understand what you're being told in your headset, relay it, and understand, painting that mental picture of the play, the routes that are being run, the protection that's being given in front of you. So I think he doesn't struggle with that, but I do think there's a timing thing, man. Like, he played in the FCS. He had one game all of last season. And I think that the speed of the NFL game is tough for anybody to adjust to. But I just think that the 49ers, I would much rather them play it safe at this point. If it was earlier in the season, maybe I'd be more inclined to be like, hey, make that switch now. There's a lot of season left. I was very encouraged with what I saw during the Arizona game. I think Trey Lance can be a very special quarterback. The way the ball jumped out of his hands in training camp, seeing it in person, it's just different. I haven't seen that from a 49ers quarterback since Colin Kaepernick. So I get very excited thinking about what they can do. I would just much rather him be just given an entirely clean slate. Because imagine this, if the 49ers are in a spot where they need a win for a playoff game or something like that, and you bring in a rookie against a tough Rams team in week 18 of the season, and he struggles a little bit like that, and you have the whole offseason with that lingering, you have the whole offseason with that lingering over your head with, oh, maybe Trey Lance is a bust, maybe he's not that good, maybe he's not the guy we thought he was. And again, I'm not saying that they need to coddle him and not play him because of that, but there's the risks of playing him at this point far outweigh the benefits, and I would just much rather give him an entire year where it's like, here are the keys, here's it's like a rental car, right? Like, when you turn in a rental car, they fill it back up, they clean it out, and they give it to somebody new. I would much rather the 49ers fill up the gas tank, get all the stuff out, wash it. It's Trey Lance's car now. It's his turn to take the franchise. And that's probably a terrible analogy. I'm not great with analogies, but I just want
I thought it was a good analogy.
I just want them to give him every opportunity to succeed. I just feel like throwing him into the fire now at this point, we're well past that point this season. And it sucks because I want to see him play too. I understand it. I've been wanting to see him play since the moment they drafted him. But I just think that they're so much better off allowing him an entire, offseason as QB1, as the guy getting first team reps, as the guy knowing that, he's going to be the one when he goes out and throws with these guys before minicamp, that he's the quarterback. So we'll see. And I'll just end it on real quick. Mahomes had one start his rookie year, and he played well against Denver. But I'm sure if you asked Patrick Mahomes, the stuff that he did off the field and the stuff that he was absorbing during practice in the film room during the week far outweighed whatever experience he got in one game in week 17 at the end of a year. They were making I don't think that game experience, in the small sample size we'll have now, game experience is extremely important, but in one game, maybe two games, 6 quarters or whatever it would be, I don't think that it's so important and pivotal to his development that the 49ers should risk whatever, plan they have. At this point, you kind of have to you made your bed, lie in it. And that's basically what I would end it on. They have to kind of see through what they did.
Absolutely. And Jordan and I are very critical of player development. It's something that I personally take a lot and put a lot of weight into. I've been around it. I understand what it looks like. And Jordan is speaking exactly to that. If we wanted a Trey Lance season in 2021, it either needed to happen week 1 or by the bye. After the bye, just like Jordan said, the bet is made, and you just gotta own it. You just gotta live with it. And so I think all of us throughout the year, we've we flirted with the idea of seeing Trey Lance, but with each game that passes by, we are a game further away from not seeing Trey Lance this year. Now, that doesn't mean that Jimmy Garoppolo can't absolutely implode and or get injured, which both things are definitely possible of doing. And then we see Trey Lance. But to Jordan's point, that's not ideal from a development standpoint to be thrown into the fire. We saw what happened when they threw him out there in week 4 against Seattle in the second half. It was just like, it was no different. It was because there's no repetition, there's no continuity, and they're just like, all right, let's see what happens. And they're running plays that they've never seen looks for from opposing defenses. They haven't had time to work with, like, so it's a completely nuanced conversation, obviously. But I kind of agree absolutely with everything that you said. It's kind of, Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback in 2021, barring a disastrous injury or disastrous game. We even saw with the 2 interceptions against Seattle, we started to question, like, maybe Trey Lance comes in, but we're like, he's probably not coming in. And he didn't. So that's part of the development thing. Do you want to throw a rookie out in that situation, a hostile environment on the road? You got to have the win. Like, that doesn't bode well for long-term development. It might bode well for knee-jerk reaction right now, but for the overall long run, it is what it is. And I like your plan. Give Trey the entire offseason to be QB1 and go through OTAs, mini camp, training camp, do it all in that sense, with no Jimmy Garoppolo looking over his shoulder. Like you said, if they keep Jimmy Garoppolo in 2022, my goodness, next year will be an extremely long year, which is, I think no one really wants that at this point. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I would add real quick too, like, does Jimmy even want that at this point? Like, I'm not
I
saying
wouldn't
that,
think
like,
so.
yeah, like at this point, like, let him be free, man. Like, you made your
Right.
decision. I think even him being this year has to be so awkward. Like, it's it's obvious you're not the guy going forward. It's obvious, like, your replacement is in the QB room with you all week. Like, I just think that at this point too, aside from how good it would be for their own growth, like, let Jimmy go, man. Like, set him free,
Right.
let him go. You know, they say they want to trade him to a team that would be good for him. They're going to work that out with his agent. His no trade clause is gone. They could realistically trade him to whoever they want, but I imagine they'll trade him to somebody they want to keep the good PR and the good optics. But if they bring him back next season, it not only is going to be extremely frustrating because we'll have to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play for 17 more games, but it would signify that they probably missed on Trey Lance. And I just think that the 49ers
Right.
can't afford that from an optic standpoint. And I'm not saying I think they missed on Trey Lance, but if you're so uncomfortable that you've had the guy in your building for a full year, it'd be almost 18 months by the time next season rolls around, and you're not comfortable allowing him to start, that's not a good sign. And this isn't the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers type situation. Like, you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback that's, stopping this guy from playing right away. So I think that they just purely from an optic standpoint, and unfortunately, I think people would like to think that the 49ers make all their decisions based on whatever is best for them winning football games. It's a business. And when you're in the entertainment business, optics are everything. Yeah. And you can't really afford to have an entire 5 months. Like, everybody remembers how chaotic that was from the draft to now with the Lance Garoppolo thing. Could you imagine it next year if they bring Jimmy back? All anybody's going to talk about is clearly this guy isn't ready. The 49ers clearly spent 3 first-round picks on a guy that's not good enough to beat out. And it creates a discourse that doesn't need to be there. So I think purely based on them avoiding that and being, cognizant of that, discussion that would permeate, they're not going to do it.
They care about messaging. They care about
they do.
messaging.
They won't allow it to happen based simply on that. And they'll package Jimmy and they'll send him to New Orleans or Pittsburgh or somewhere, Houston, somewhere he really wants to go. And they'll make a nice little tribute video for him and thanks for the memories and all that. But it will be the Trey Lance. I have to believe it will be the Trey Lance, show in 2022. And if it's not, well, it'll be, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be great for content creators because it will be through the roof. But I hope for the fans' sake that doesn't happen because it's not good for a lot of reasons.
I personally don't want to spend another offseason, a season answering Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo questions, honestly. So I think that's where we all hope. And I also, too, believe that, I don't necessarily 100% throw all the fault on Jimmy Garoppolo. There is a world and a range of outcome where Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan just don't mesh. And when that occurs, performance can go down and be volatile and go up as a result. So I'm not going to sit here and just say, oh, this is all Jimmy. We got to get Jimmy out. Just a change of scenery, like you pointed to, could be beneficial, not only for the team, the fans, but for Jimmy Garoppolo as well. I always thought if Jimmy Garoppolo is playing with the Patriots right now, he's probably winning games with them. So obviously Mac Jones is running that show, but I felt like, Jimmy Garoppolo has an opportunity to still be successful in this league. Change of scenery. We've seen it with a multitude of other players. Sometimes just a different environment cultivates different level of performance, and that's okay. We'll see. But another reason why to stay locked on Jordan and I's content throughout the year. Obviously, the season's almost coming to a close, but the off season's just about to get started. Jordan, tell them where to follow you and get more of your content.
You can follow me on Twitter. I do most of my stuff through there when I'm not writing. My @'s on the bottom of the screen there. And then you can find me at Niners Nation. I do write a few pieces a week for them as well. So yeah, I appreciate any support. And obviously, please like Brad's video. Brad is fantastic. It's always an honor to come on his channel and talk football with him. And just like he said, like, we could talk for hours, and there's times where we do literally for hours to talk about
Right.
football. So I appreciate you guys caring to hear what we have to say about it. It makes me feel very good. Oh, real quick, Don Burr, let's go, dude. I was so happy for you. Let's go, Don Burr, Detroit versus everybody. Playoffs are still alive. Let's go, dude. I was so stoked for Don Burr when I saw that Jared Goff touchdown. So yeah, I'm really happy.
Bro, name a better duo than 49ers content creators and Don Burr. I'm just saying.
Don Burr deserves that win, and that is a real fan, and I'm serious. I like Dan Campbell. I hope they turn it around because Don Burr deserves to see a winning football team. So congrats, Don. I'm really happy for you, dude.
Yeah, I am. There a couple more years of building up some talent. Maybe they'll be a contender before we know it. So we'll see. We're not going to hold our breath though because it is Detroit. So it is what it is. Again, thank you, Jordan, for hopping on. We'll figure out. Jordan's going to be on here every week. We'll just got to figure out where we're going to slot him in. And we'll be back tomorrow with Jason Aponte for the State of the Franchise episode. Again, thank you guys as always. Sourdough Squad, always repping in the comments. We appreciate you guys. We got more content coming the rest of the week. So stay tuned, stay locked in, and we'll see you guys later.